experience and in my knowledge and skills, but I also hope to hear from you. Case studies. So if you also have a challenge faced, or if you have better case studies, so at the end of the session, you can also comment and share, or you can ask questions. I hope everybody can hear me.
I can hear you okay. I imagine everyone else can.
Okay, I've just shared my slides. Can you all see the slides? Can you see the slides?
Yes, Mahadi, I can see the slides. I hope everyone else can. Is there anyone having trouble seeing the slides?
So okay. I hope maybe
we can go ahead.
Yeah, I hope we can go ahead. And I've shared the PPT. I think later on you can share to the rest of the participants in this webinar. So this is open data. So even this slide are under open data license by attribution. So yeah, you can use and share as well. So to go straight to the learning outcome of today, so what we hope to achieve at the end of this call is to understand the meaning of open data, its principle, the general overview of open data and impact for Africa development. So before I jump into open data, I normally like to start with the word data itself. So in this aspect, data is the raw facts and figures. And to most people, normally they take data, they associate data with statistics. So, so in this aspect, data is from the images, it could be from sound, graphics, text, and of course the statistics. So data can be alphanumeric characters. And in this aspect also of open data, we normally say that data has no meaning and also data has no context. In that fact that data has no meaning and has no context, make it very rich in a sense that each organization, individuals can interpret data to answer their own organizational objective. So as opposed to information, which is actually the data that has already been processed, and normally if the data is being processed, normally it answers particular organizational objective. So data in that sense, it's raw, it has no meaning, it has no context. It makes it richer and freedom for people to manipulate it, to take it on their own directions. So I'm sure you must have come to this phrase that data is the new crude oil. And as I said before, data is raw. So that, that means data must be refined from crude oil to consumable so that it can be meaningful. And in that case, there is a pyramid of data in the sense that so there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of facts and figures out there. But when you go up to the pyramid, there's the pyramid, it's a kind of like, it's narrowing as it goes up. Like those who are able to process the data to take to the next level to information, that means skill is also limited. But also, so that is one aspect. So processing data to the next level is also a challenge. So, and if you go to the higher level, those who can actually be able to take action from the information is also limited. So we have a lot of data. We have a bit of information that has come out of the data, but also when you go to action, impactful action, it's also limited. So the pyramid is going up there. So in that case, we want today to discuss the value of open data and how it can, help in moving up towards the pyramid. So there comes the open data now. So open data is the data that anyone can access, use, or share. And I'll define these three terms as I go along: access, use, and share, what they mean. So this definition has been adopted from the Open Data Institute, but you also find that every country have their own way of defining the open data. So the open data definition differs from country to country. But the key issue is that the data should be able to be accessed by anyone, should be not limited in terms of use, and it can be shared. So the big question now comes, like, why people are often up to open data versus open information. Like, as you see the images, that image, like, as I said, that the data, benefit of data is that it's a raw fact, it doesn't have context. So any organization, any individual can act on the data, can process on the data to answer their own objective. So in that case, open data in a sense that it gives a freedom, rather than to open information in a sense that open information, that means is the data that has already been processed to answer a particular organizational objective. In that case, it's a bit limited. So open data is much more valuable and freedom of use as compared to open information. So that's why you oftentimes hear open data rather than open information. And open data has a number of principles. So as you heard, I mean, as you saw from the definition of open data, that open data is a data that can be data that can be accessed, used, and shared. So it comes with this principle. So one of the principles of open data, it must be machine readable. By machine readability, I mean that open data, it should be readily used. It should be readily used by machines, in a sense that the format that the data is produced, the platform where the data is being published, should be able to offer the usability. For instance, that we have a level like PDF. So PDF is the lowest level. And then you can go to the next level, which is Excel. And then if you go to the next level, it's CSV. So as you go up the stars, you'll find that you also increase the level of usability. So if you publish the data in an open platform, but that data, somebody needs to have a specialized software or proprietary software so that they can be able to open or use that particular data. So it becomes not machine readable because it provides some restriction towards it. And then the open data should be accessible in a sense that data should be in a public accessible environment. So we shouldn't be knocking the door to asking for open data. And that comes along with the formatting, but as well as also it should be online in a sense that everybody can access. Though in African context, I often get a question, why are you saying online data is open as opposed to the data that is published on the boards? But then the data, though that we know that we have technology limitation in Africa, but if data is only published on the board, that means it's only limited to people in that particular area, as opposed if the data is online, that anybody can be able to download and be able to reproduce that data. But if it's in a hard copy, then it limits the usability, the shareability, and the whole accessibility aspect. And open data, it doesn't mean it's always free. So it depends where it has been published. But the key thing here is that open data should not be more than a reasonable reproduction cost. So it can come with the cost associated with it, but it should be a reasonable cost. And another principle of open data is that the data should be permanent, in a sense that today where I refer the data, and tomorrow if I need to refer back to that data, I should find it there. So that means that the data has to be permanent. So it's not that you're publishing the data today and then you receive criticism, you decide that I should take out that data. So it loses the meaning of openness. I know, like in Tanzania, once we had that situation where data was published and there are a lot of criticism towards that data, and then then the government decided to, the particular organization decided that to take it off from the public platform. So with open data, that means you should allow criticism, and so that you can improve the quality and processes of your organization. And also it should be in an open license. By open license, it means that it should allow the data to be used, reused, and shared to the least. You should not limit, for instance, this data cannot be used for commercial purpose, but with the whole essence of the data should be used, reused. So it should allow that. And the data is only open if it's open license. So if you just publish the data without a license, so that means that data is not actually open, because it's like a driver without a driving license. That means you don't have, you're not required actually to drive, though you know how to drive by the law. So similarly to the data, it's open only when it has open license associated with it. And most license that I use are Creative Commons. And also, data should be featured. You should know to the least the source of that particular data. So metadata means data about data. So there should be a data that particular have different standards of metadata. So these standards normally are different, which actually open data portals. Let's say if you go to Tanzania Open Data Portal, you'll also see that it describes the license. It describes provide description of some of the terms. It provides keywords. It also provides a methodology that was used. So the metadata can range from one organization to another, depending on the open data, metadata standard that they are adhering to. And the other thing, the open data should maintain anonymity, though it's openness, but it should not it should not publish data, IDs of people or names of people, or publish.
Mahadia, there seems to be a little problem with your connection.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. All right, go ahead.
So where did you lose me? So yeah, so maintaining anonymity, that's what the data should describe. Should not give the names of people. And then the other thing, the data generally should promote transparency. And open data sources, anyone can be the source of open data. At the middle, you see the government is the giant, in the sense that most of the time the government collects a lot of data. But open data sources can be an individual, a researcher, a journalist, anybody that collect data, they can opt to share that data, and they can be sources of open data. And the most important thing why we are talking about the data, open data, is the values associated with open data. So shortly, I will describe by cases in specific area how open data has been able to improve lives and quality of public services, and also how open data have been able to create new business model. So the benefits of open data ranges from improving performance to socio-economic value, but also enhancing the participation, in the sense that when the data is out there, people can react on the data. So it improves that citizen participation, but also improving quality. People can question on the data and can lead to the organization improving quality of that particular data. But also on the other hand of innovation, so data-driven innovation that came from the analyzing the challenges that are on the ground, they are more, they have more chances of going to the to the market, rather than if the innovation is not a data-driven innovation. So it actually comes out from a particular challenge or fact on the ground. So also data is one of improving the innovative services, and also improving transparency and accountability. So if I go to cases by cases, I know I have like 5 minutes before Q&A. So if I go to cases where open data have actually resulted to impact, so the recent Ebola case in Congo and Liberia, where in this case, the mobile phone technology was used to actually report Ebola cases. And so this data I've shown here, at the bottom of the slides, you'll see that I've pasted the URL. So if you go to this URL, you can actually see the data. And so in this case, so it can help the citizen, the analyst, to be able to understand the impact of the disease, but also the innovator to design services that could be helped to solve these cases. So open data help the problem to be a community problem, not necessarily only a government problem. So different actors can act on real time regarding the problem. So it becomes a community problem. Everybody will be able to understand the patterns and be able to find a way on how they can solve a pattern. So that's how it has been applied in Liberia and Congo. But also, if you go to our neighbor, from Tanzania, our neighbor in Kenya, so using crop price data, so innovator came up with a mobile technology where the farmers could actually be able to know what are the market prices. So this is essential. We know that most of the time, small-scale farmers, people like buy the crops at very minimal cost, and they end up they don't benefit as those brokers, because those they're the ones who knows like what's the market price. But with the opening up crop price data, so you allow innovation like this mobile application where a farmer can actually query and understand like what is the current crop price, so they can be able to negotiate. But also open data, you'll see that like in Nepal, using OpenStreetMap. So this is the data like, so before and after. So on the left side, it was 2012, and on the right side, it was 2013. So allowing the community to map and share the map data. In that case, now you are opening up for individual to be able to share the location data. So this one actually have fast track of mapping the infrastructure and essential services, rather than if this data was closed and only depending on a particular organization or government to do the mapping, it could take ages. But if you involve community, that means also you are involving the workforce and also reducing the cost. So, and in that case, improving also the speed and also ensuring the quality. I know Edie from this call is also coming from the OpenStreetMap team. I'm sure he'll be able to comment at the end, but allowing the community to access map and contribute to maps fast track the process. So, yeah. So, and then also, I wanted to go back to, I think this slide, I just skipped it. So I wanted to go back to this slide, how open data helped to solve a disaster in 2015 in Tanzania. So in 2016, we had a problem flooding in Tanzania. So in that case, the government and other humanitarian were wondering how could they reach to the areas that were affected by flood. But through the use of open street map, that means people were able now to know where are the affected areas and where are the routes that have been affected, where are the routes that are likely going to be safe going to the affected area so that they could assist the victim quickly. So thanks to the HOT team sharing this data, so people were able to know how to reach to the affected area quickly. So open data can help in different aspects. But also in other aspects, open data can be used to improve the education system. So previously, in Tanzania, education data was not open. In that case, people could not be able to access, could not be able to tell the impact or the level to which the education quality was degrading. In that case, after the open education, people were, after publishing the open data, different actors started to question the government. Like, why is this school at the central city with all resources, but is on the last, in the last top 10, in the last 10 schools while it has resources? So it started raising that questions, and even government now started wondering and take action, immediate action. Journalists started writing and saying that why this is the situation, why government schools are failing, while even special schools are also dropping, what's happening? Remember, I remember there's a certain article where somebody analyzed the data and then said and map it to the to the single parent and say that this single parent have worked so hard to take their kids to the government school, and only to find that this school did not have even one student passed. So what's the value of money? How are we going to help these people who cannot take their kids to the government school? So those questions raised because the data was published, people were able to provide questions, and also people were able to contribute to the problem, and government took action. So open data can help to improve quality of our public services if it is taken into positive side. So also open data comes with a challenge, especially in Africa. In most African countries, we don't have open data police. And in that case, make the open data to be only the willingness of a particular of the particular people that are in power of the particular government session. So if from one government to the other, you might find that there are different policies associated, changes, there are different changes. So you find that the one government has made a lot of infrastructures toward open data, but since we don't have policy, it's not something that has been institutionalized. So you might find all these resources are being wasted from one government to another. I've seen this is the situation that happened in Tanzania. We have our open data portal, and then so in the open data portal, the data used to be published. So to most sectors that you find that data has been published up to 2015, but then soon after 2016, then the new government then withdrew from the open government partnership, and then the World Bank again, also the open data project of the World Bank ended, and then you find that there's a little update on the open data portal. So also this is a challenge in African countries. Even most projects are still, they're just pilot project in their small scale project. So there's no systematic approach and long-term strategy toward the openness. And also the infrastructure is a barrier. And the other thing is also like, so this is specifically to Tanzania for the statistical and media and cybercrime law, which also like the statistical law that you have to, like whatever you have researched, you have collected, you have to involve NBS to approve the methodology. So to some of the literature, it's argued that that is promoting a single story and limiting the whole idea of openness, because the idea of openness is publishing and let people comment on the data. And also lacking of different standards, different ministries, different organizations have different standards that they're publishing data in different standards. So now it becomes a challenge. How can we take all these data that are in silo? How can we merge this data to analyze and bring out meaningful results? So standards is one of the key factors, and you find that even in organization, they don't have data standards. In that case, even organization, different departments, they collect data in different standards. And also, if you have read the current UN, the current framework that published by UN, trying to solve the issue of how government can adapt to the whole idea, the national statistical system can adapt to the national framework in which can avoid these issues, starting from procuring tools. So I know, like even in most African countries, we find that different ministries are using different tools, in which these tools at the end limiting the interoperability. For instance, one tool collect geospatial data in eastern and northern. The other tool collect geospatial data in longitude and latitude. So these two organizations will face challenges if they want to merge this data, because you have to convert to other standards, which may lead to decreasing the precision and accuracy. The whole idea of computer literacy, so the data is published on the portal, but how many people are actually accessing the data in the portal? So like in Tanzania, there's a certain research actually done by Twaweza, which was trying to understand like how many people are accessing data from the open data portal, how many people are even aware that open data portal exists. So we find that there are open data portals, but people don't know that they're not aware. So in the open data portal in this aspect can be from the government, but can also be from non-government. But people are not aware if these portals are actually even exist. And even if when they are aware, they don't have necessary skills to use the data that is available on the portal. And most of the time, data in the portal is published focusing on the people at a certain, of a certain education level and background, so limiting the value of the open data. And the number of myths associated with data. So most people think that open data is bad for business, that you cannot do business with open data. First, this is not true. As I said, that open data, it doesn't mean first it doesn't mean always it comes out free. So with the open data, when you publish open data, people can use open data also to make business model associated with it. For instance, I'll give one example in Tanzania and one example in UK. So in Tanzania, from the open education data, now the government, now we have mobile apps. Once the data is, the results are published, people can query through using their mobile phone, and they'll be associated with a certain, they'll be charged a certain amount of fee. So in that case, they'll be able to get results on time, because these apps are using USSD applications. So thinking of people at the village, so they can use the available data that has been published freely. But with this innovation, they can be able to access that data through the USSD application, as opposed to the how it was done in the past, that people had to go to the internet cafe, and then from the internet cafe, they have to pay a certain amount of money, and then normally the internet cafe are in the areas where there is internet access, so it will be far away from the village. So these people normally get their results very late. But with this USSD application, that means people can get results on time anywhere that they are. All open, on the second point, that open data, all data that should be open is not true. As I said, that open data first should maintain anonymity. There is a sensitive data, like the military data, cannot be open because of the government, because of the national interest. But also there is a critical data for businesses, that if the government share that data, that means that is a core part of their business, so that they can decide to hide that data. But it doesn't mean when government goes for open data, they should publish all their data. They can choose what to publish and what not to publish. And also, open data is opposed to privacy. As I said, that open data should maintain anonymity. So it's not true. There are no benefits associated with the open data publisher. I'm a researcher from the university. So one of the good things about open data, once you publish open data, that means, and you publish data by attribution, like my slide, I said that they're open by attribution. That means whenever you use this slide, you refer back to the original source. So also raise the profile of the original author. But also for researcher can attract a number of other research consultancy, research project, if you publish a data and it was a quality data people were able to use. So also closed, but is open, people can be able to track from the source and know. But there was this debate that I want to keep this because I'm the original author and I want to be known as the original author. But you can only be known as the original author if you have published that data and people can trace that this is the original author, as opposed if it's closed and somebody else just open it, people can take that person who opened it up as the original author. So open data has a lot of benefit for data publisher. And and then the other misconception and myth that most people and organizations think is that when they're opening up data, they're done. So this is not the case. as we say that data is a crude oil. And if the data is a crude oil, that means it has to be refined. So people cannot, if you just publish your data and that's it, doesn't mean that that data will be used. So if you have published the data, it is in the right format. If people can be able to make sense of the data, if you have published enough data for people to make sense out of the data, so that people will be able granular, the more the data is richer and the more the data people can use. But also for government, they have to sensitize their open data portals, because I know for this case, I train open data. You train in a room where there are also government people and you ask, have you ever seen the open data portal? They say, no, we don't know. But there is education data and you're coming from the education department, so some of your data is there. So sometimes it's also issue of sensitizing and maybe finding a way or innovative way of also improving the demand. So it should be like you're publishing, so the supply and demand should be balanced so the ecosystem can be stable and strengthened in that way. So the last bit in how the data at the organizational level. So normally at the organizational level, normally there has to be a champion who drives the open data and sees the value from the top leadership. It's not so that can ensure the data is being published, but the data is of quality, the data is published timely, because also time and quality, they are key issues in open data that makes it a valuable data. Once you publish a data that is outdated, of less quality, becomes of no value. And always start simple. It's not always about publishing everything at once. You can start with some of the data set and improving, going incrementally onwards. And quality of data is improved when the data is being shared, because you can get feedback when the data is shared from the community. So it becomes not organizational problem, but it's a community problem. Also, we should, as much as we publish data in order to create value, we should also build the capacity on how to use the data and how to publish the data as well. Data, we should understand thorough our users of the data and publishing the data in a format that the users of our data can be able to understand that particular data. And always engage the demand side, trigger the demand side to use data. If you just publish data and ensure that if I publish, anybody can use, it's not always the case. I like this one example was given by a person that they say that in order to trigger their data, I remember this was Nena. I think it was Nena from Web Foundation. I remember she said that maybe organization could use social media, for instance, once they have published, let's say, it's a research data or it's a budget data. And then if you trigger discussion in the social media like Twitter, Facebook, people will always go back to the source and be able to read and understand and comment back. So that means you also engage, the demand side, you trigger the use of the data. Publishing the data alone is not enough. You have to trigger the demand as well, which is a challenge part. So I would like to end as a key takeaway is that open data will drive organization being more efficient and working collaborative to solve common problems. Because now it's not only a matter of one organization, now it's a community that drives the change. I would like to end at this point and invite for questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mahadia, for that amazing presentation. That was really good, and it spoke to some of the issues that I had in mind. A few questions that I had have already been answered. So I'll take this time to give open up the space for anyone with questions or comments regarding this presentation. Please feel free to jump in with a question or comment. Anyone? Okay, well, we give time for people to let this sink in, and probably a few questions and comments will come after. Mahadia, I have a quick question. You sort of spoke to this when you were talking about the data pyramid, and they have this, I'm sure, has been raised before, and you've probably had it, that the conceptualization of open data is data that is published online. So how do we deal with the fact that this data continues to sort of empower a group that is already empowered? So there's a gap for people who are offline. If you're talking about agricultural food prices, for instance, what about those people who are not online? How do you sort of bridge that gap between open data that is published online, and how do you make sure this data reaches the people who are offline?
Okay, yeah, so that is the question that I normally wait to hear. Talking about the open data, so the data being open, being open up online is a key, in a sense that once it's there online, you allow multiple actors and innovators to actually finding a solution to bridge the gap. That's why I gave example for, let's say, Kenya, where they use crop data that is online, use the crop data to create a mobile app that connects to the farmer. And then this mobile app is not it's not a smartphone based, rather than it's a USSD based. That means even a person at the village where there's no internet, so long as they have a phone, they can be able to ask or query for the market price. So the whole idea for the data being online, allowing the communities, the innovators to, that means now it doesn't become only the problem of government or a certain organization, it becomes a community problem, bridging the gap for those who are online and offline, as opposed only to publish or finding a solution for a particular area only. So once the data is online, you allow different groups to find a solution on bridging the gap. So that's the key towards the open data.
Thank you so much. Does anyone want to jump in before I ask my second and last question? Okay, I'll go forward with it. And probably Edie, you said she's worked on mapping, and she could possibly also speak to this a little bit. So one of the examples you gave us was of a mapping, and this is also being done in Kenya by Kibera Mapping, which is a community group mapping a low-income area. But increasingly, concerns have been raised about data justice, and especially regarding open data and mapping low-income areas, and the risk that comes with it, whether this then exposes low-income areas to gentrification and stuff like that. Going forward, are these discussions are useful to have, and sort of how do we get around this?
So sorry, I missed one point. You say it raises a question of what? Sorry.
Sorry, I'll just start over. Yeah, so I'm saying one of the examples you used was of mapping, and I think you mentioned Edie works on this as well. So there's an example of this happening in Kenya, where a community has come together to map Kibera, which is a low-income area, and they've done an amazing job. But there are questions being raised increasingly about data justice. And when you talk about open data, who is this data for? And then, what is the risk of it? Does this opening up this data open up the areas or low-income areas to gentrification, and then put the livelihoods of the community at risk? So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on this? What are ways to go around it? And are these conversations increasingly that we should have when you're opening up data? There are risks that come up with regard to exposing communities to things that could threaten their livelihoods.
Yeah, so I know the Kibera, and even in Tanzania, it's the Tandale and Manzese, those areas, I mean, they are of extreme, they are the ones normally, the mapping community start with them in a sense that they want the areas to be, hello, okay, I thought I'm offline. So they want to ensure that to map out the services, like the infrastructure, etc., so that they can be acted upon. So I would say that this discussion should be the risk versus the value. So what value are we getting from mapping, and what risk are they associated with the, and how can we mitigate the most use of the data by guys, so rather than if this data is closed. So for me, the risk vis-a-vis the value of open, I see there is a lot of value. What are the different ways that we can get such risk? But yeah, I feel like community mapping is the best way. In a sense, like people here normally ask, like, if it's a community, everybody can contribute to the map. How does that assure the quality? But then with the community mapping is where you can get updated maps vis-a-vis the
Hello? Hello? Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I think we're having a bit of a problem with our internet. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if Edie wants to say something about that as well. If she's able to communicate. Okay, while we wait for that, Edie, Lambert has a quick question for you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just muted.
Okay, fine. So Lambert asks how the NBS through the NSS affect the use of open data, which skills matter for people to be good at using open data, and what is the technology needed in using open data?
So I had the two last questions, the skills and technology. What was the first question?
Sorry, let me just paste this to everyone just so you can also see it. 1 second. Okay, are you able to see it? Can you see it? Mahadia, can you see the question? Hello? I don't know if we're having a problem with our internet connection. Mahadia, can you see the messages? She's speaking. Can you guys hear anything?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. We had a little problem with our internet, but we can hear you now.
Okay, that's fine. So I did not get the question. I only got regarding the technology and you okay, how strong, so is this the question, the first one? How the NBS through the National Statistical System affect the use of open data? Okay, and which skills matter for people to be good at using open data? What are the technology needed in using open data? Okay.